TasRail is the state-owned operator of freight rail service in Tasmania. It is also the owner and operator of the mainline rail network in Tassie. They have an expansive fleet consisting of diesel-electric locomotives and numerous types of wagons, hoppers, loaders and other rail vehicles. In this video, I will discuss the full fleet of TasRail, including the historical locomotives no longer running. Some brief important information to cover. All of TasRail's fleet runs on 3/6 inch or 1067mm gauge, also known as narrow gauge. This is the setup of all mainline railways in Tasmania. For most of the history of diesel locomotives in Tasmania, they ran on English electrics, including the famed X and Y classes. However, more recently, they've been mostly imports from the mainland and New Zealand. Firstly, we will talk about the true workhorses of the TasRail fleet, the TR Class. These are by far the newest locomotives in Tasmania, being delivered in 2013 and 2014. There are currently 17 TR classes running in Tasmania, and they run on the main Western, South, Derwent Valley and Bell Bay lines. The TR class was built by Progress Rail in Georgia in the United States. When delivered, they were the first new locos in Tasmania since 1973. The project to construct the locomotives cost around $60 million at the time. The design of the locomotives is heavily based on many locos operated by Kiwi Rail in New Zealand, especially the DL class, which were constructed around the time. The key sign of this is the rugged feel with the exposed cables at the front. The TRs are quite heavy locomotives and as such cannot run regularly on the Melbourne and Fingal lines, as they have lighter rails and sharper bends. The introduction of the TR classes resulted in the mothballing of numerous older locomotives, which we will discuss later. The maximum speed of the TR class is 100 km an hour. Now we get to the second most numerous of the active loco classes. This is the DQ class with 8 in service. The DQ class were built in the 1960s in Queensland by Clyde Engineering as the 1460 and 1602 classes. They ran under Queensland Rail for the next 30 years until 1995 when they were sold to TransRail in New Zealand. They were rebuilt as the DQ and QR classes. We will discuss the QR class later. The DQs were sold to Australian Transport Network to replace the aging English electric locos currently running in Tasmania. They were numbered in the 2000 series in Tasmania. In 1998, DQs 2001 and 2002 arrived in Bell Bay, with further batches of locos later that year and in early 1999, till all 12 DQs had arrived in Tasmania. The first ones entered service only months after arrival, and were instantly known for numerous generator failures. This meant they were notorious for their unreliability. However, more recently they've been hauling reduced loads, which has helped with this. They were sold to Pacific National when they took over the Tasmanian system, and again to TasRail when they were founded. After the TRs were introduced, 5 of the DQ class were overhauled, with only 7 remaining in service. However, in 2019, DQ 2007 was overhauled into a DV class as a replacement for DV1, which we will discuss later. 2007, which had been withdrawn, was then renumbered DV2. DQ 2008 was also returned to service to cover shortfallings from the TRs, which did not have as much capacity as was intended. The DQs mainly run on the Melbourne and Fingal lines nowadays, but do occasionally run on all lines. The DQs have a maximum speed of 80 km per hour. The next class to cover is the 2050 class. These were built in Queensland by Clyde Engineering as the 2150 class in 1978-9. They were operated by Queensland Rail until 2004, when Queensland National Rail took possession of them. In 2011, 4 of the class were sold to TasRail. The remainder went on to South Africa, with some returning to Queensland. The 4 sent to Tasmania were 2150, 2151, 2153 and 2154. They were renumbered to 2051 to 54. They began service in Tasmania during 2012. The 4 locos were not repainted, however their QR logos were replaced with TasRail ones. All 4 were withdrawn in 2015 with the introduction of the TR class. However, in 2018, 2051 and 2054 were returned to service, and in 2023 the restoration of the other two began. By 2025 both were returned to service, now in TasRail livery. I filmed them at the 50th anniversary of the Don River Railway this year, with 2052 and 2053 sitting on the tracks at Don Junction. Their maximum speed is 80 km per hour. The final operating class of TasRail locomotive is the DV class. The DV class is a predominantly shunting locomotive used mostly on the Railton cement runs. The DV class consists of two rebuilt locomotives, those being the previously mentioned DV2, formerly DQ 2007. This conversion took place in 2019 and was running from 2020. The first DV class was DV1, formerly a Y-class English Electric. This was Y7, which after the withdrawal of most of the Y-class was kept for spare parts. In 2001 it was overhauled and became DV1. DV1 was a joint trailer and shunting engine. It could be used to remotely control another locomotive on a trailer or vice versa. Officially known as a driving van, DV1 continued up until 2020, when the introduction of DV2 resulted in the withdrawal of former Y7. It is believed to be stored at East Tamar Junction. DV1 had a top speed of 72 km an hour, and DV2 has a top speed of 80 km an hour. Now we have covered all of the operational TasRail locomotives, it's time to look at some of the former ones. To stop us from being here all day, I'll brush through some of the less important ones as we go. But first, if you want to support the preservation of historic diesel locomotives in Tasmania and the opening of a new heritage railway line in northern Tasmania, support the Launceston and North East Railway. The LNER are aiming to restore part of or all of the North Eastern line in northern Tasmania. They have pedal-powered railbugs ready to operate on the line and have accreditation to run. If you want to help them out getting their wheels turning for the public, go to lner.com.au to support them. Two Western Australian Government Railways D-Class locomotives were sold to TasRail in 1998 and shipped to Tasmania in 2001. These were used on the network until 2015, when because of the introduction of the TR class they were withdrawn. They were sold back to Watco Australia and were shipped to the mainland in 2017. They are now running back in Western Australia under their original names. Now the QR class. Their story was the same as the DQs up until their introduction into Tassie. There were three of them, all of which were lightly used in Tasmania and placed into storage for various amounts of times. They were all scrapped in 2012. The DC class was very short-lived in Tasmania. Only one was sent to Tasmania from New Zealand in 1998 and was used on the main lines until 2011, when it was scrapped after a proposal to rebuild it fell through. The MKA Class was one of the most interesting ones no longer running. They were formerly Queensland Rail 1300 classes before the entire class was shipped to Tasmania, becoming the ZC Class. Several of these were rebuilt as the MKA Class, and after a long career in various countries around the world, the 6 MKA classes remaining were all back in Tasmania working for Pacific National in 2007. Two of them were purchased by CFCL Australia for a proposed heritage railway that failed, and were sent to Senegal. In 2009, the remaining 5 were brought under the control of government-operated TasRail. 3 were sent for scrap in 2012, and 2144 was sent to the Launceston and North East Railway. In 2021, it was moved to Lilydale Yard, and finally MKA 8 was sent to the LNER in 2024 as the final member of the class to be preserved. Now it's time to discuss the Z class. This was the last type of train built for Tasmania before the TR class, almost 50 years later. They were built in 1973 by English Electric for the Tasmanian Government Railways. They were built specifically for the new Bell Bay line under construction at the time. These were developed as a similar model to the Western Australian Government Railways R class. They were the heaviest locomotives in Tasmania at the time. Only 4 were ever built, however. In 1978 they were sold to Australian National when Tasmanian Government Railways ceased operations. They were converted to air braking in the mid-1980s. They were renumbered as the 2110 class in 1998, and all 4 were modified for driver-only operation afterwards. All 4 continued in service until 2014, when during the introduction process of the TR class they were withdrawn from service. In 2022, Z1 and Z4 were acquired by the Bellarine Peninsula Railway in Victoria, and Z2 and Z3 went to the Don River Railway. All remaining locomotives are variants of the Z class. I won't bother you with specific details about each of them, but here are their types and numbers. ZA, 6 locos with 3 scrapped, 2 preserved and 1 stored. ZB, 12 locos, formerly Queensland Rail 2350 class, 1 rebuilt as ZR class, 1 as ZP class, 3 scrapped, 1 stored, 2 at Launceston and North East Railway, and 1 at the Don River Railway. ZC, 45 locos, formerly Queensland Rail 1300 class, 8 converted to MKA Class, with only 6 remaining by 1997. 1 ZC is preserved at the Launceston and North East Railway, with no other originals preserved of the 45. ZR, 2 locos, rebuilt ZB Class. Both withdrawn in 2014, 1 has been donated to the LNER. ZP, 1 loco, rebuilt ZB Class. Withdrawn in 2014 and preserved at the Don River Railway. Okay, that's all of the locomotives. There's a lot less information on the other rolling stock items, but I'll go through what I have now. TasRail's current wagon fleet, according to their website, is this. 54 TOMY class, ore wagons. 17 THGHY class, coal wagons. 19 THFY class cement wagons, 40 RBL class log tainers, 112 TQAY class intermodal wagons, 50 TQCY class intermodal wagons, 2 TQBY class intermodal wagons, 40 unclassed log wagons, 35 legacy intermodal log wagons being an unspecified mixture of QLE, TQMF and IB classes. These show the wide diversity and complexity of TasRail's rolling stock fleet. There isn't much information on the history of most of those or where they're based out of, but I imagine most of the ore wagons are in Burnie and Primrose Junction, and the coal ones at Duncan and East Tamar Junction. The others are likely more varied. The final section we need to discuss is maintenance vehicles. Unlike places like Victoria, with their iconic maintenance vehicles like Evie, we don't have a single main maintenance vehicle. Instead, we have several for different purposes. While I can't find any specific information on numbers, I can find that TasRail has at least 4 high rail utes and other vehicles, and several Harco Mark ballast tampers. This brings me to the end of this video on the rolling stock of TasRail. Let's hope that more modern locomotives can be introduced and the older ones can be preserved, and the mass scrappings of the ZC class can be avoided into the future. Let's also hope that one day I can be making a video about the passenger rail fleet of Tasmania whenever that exists. This video was an absolute pain to research, and if you enjoyed it, consider subscribing or becoming a channel member to support me. Remember to check out the Launceston and North East Railway to support heritage diesel preservation in Tasmania, and I'll see you next time on Tasmanian.